several hours after this strike against Hania, the IDF also confirmed that it had killed Mohammad, who was the head of Hamas's military wing in Gaza, excuse me. And now they carried that strike out several weeks ago, but it hadn't been confirmed that he had been killed. And so there are three primary leaders whom Israel had said were responsible for organizing the October 7th attack. Two have been killed and announced dead this week, and the third is Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be in tunnels underneath Gaza.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by defense reporter Mike Brest. Mike, we've gotten some good news on the Detained Americans front.
That's a great question. So earlier today, the U.S. announced this massive prisoner swap. It includes about 24 individuals released from the U.S., from Russia, Poland, Germany, Norway, and Slovenia. And so this is a deal that the U.S. Spent months working on, talking with allies, talking to Russia to see if this is something that could even come together. And so the U.S. secured the release of 3 Americans and a green card holder, all of whom have been in Russian detention for over a year. In the case of Paul Whelan, almost 6 years now.
Right.
And so this is something the administration had made a priority. However, once the administration had agreed to a deal in December 2022 to secure the release of Brittany Griner, it became apparent that the U.S. no longer had any individual that they could trade for, because Russia did not value what the U.S. was offering.
Mm-hmm.
And so what President Putin had made known was that there was an individual arrested in Germany, a former FSB officer, who was arrested on murder charges for killing a Chechen dissident in a park in Berlin in broad daylight. And so once it became known that this was sort of the individual Putin was targeting, it became a much more complex version of a deal because it brought Germany in. And so from there, we didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes, but for several months, the administration has worked with several allies, and now we know that Poland, Slovenia, and Norway were all involved in this deal, giving up Russians who were arrested in their country, charged, and convicted.
So there was one pretty big asset that Russia got in exchange for the release of Paul Whelan in particular, and the Wall Street Journal reporter who'd been detained.
Yeah, and so it's that individual who was accused of murder, but they also got 7 other Russians released in this swap. And so it's unclear why the deal happened right now, 6 months before a presidential election, but it came together at this moment, and those Americans and the German nationals who were released as well are heading home.
So we've also seen a pretty big strike against Hamas in the war between Israel and the terrorist organization in Gaza.
That's right. So I think a good place to start is to take us back almost a week over the weekend, when a Hezbollah rocket launched from southern Lebanon hit the Golan Heights and hit a soccer field, and it killed 12 teenagers. Given this strike, everyone knew that Israel was going to retaliate. They just didn't know how or when. We saw that attack about 2 nights later when they carried out a strike targeting a senior Hezbollah official in Beirut. Less than 24 hours after that strike, and people thought that this was a pretty significant strike given it was in Beirut and given whom they targeted. But less than 24 hours later, a senior Hamas leader, the head of their political branch, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed in Tehran. And so he was there for the Iranian president's inauguration. He was staying in, obviously, the capital, and he was staying in a guest house that was guarded by the IRGC, guarded by Iranian military. And yet, we now know that an explosive device had been planted in the room he was staying in months ahead of time, most likely by Israel, though they haven't confirmed it. And then when he arrived in that room, they detonated it, and he was killed. And this was a very dramatic moment, what some experts believe could be a turning point in the situation in the Middle East. We now have Iran vowing a response, though it's unclear what exactly that will look like. Could they escalate it? We haven't seen exactly a response from Hezbollah for that attack, and so it could be a coordinated attack. There's been reporting that the leaders of Iran and its proxies, including Hezbollah, are meeting tomorrow, the day after the funeral for Hania, to discuss what their response will look like. There is a possibility that this could look like an expansion of the Israel-Hezbollah war, which has gone on for several months, which would be very devastating for both sides and could incur significant damage and casualties on both sides. We also saw back in April Iran carry out an unprecedented aerial assault towards Israel, launching about 300 rocket missiles and drones. Though Israel, with its allies, including the U.S., were able to largely thwart that attack, we could see something similar this time around as well.
So there's at least some potential for Israel to be facing a multi-front war.
That's exactly right. The interesting aspect is several hours after the strike against Hania, the IDF also confirmed that it had killed Mohammad, who was the head of Hamas's military wing in Gaza, And now they carried that strike out several weeks ago, but it hadn't been confirmed that he had been killed. And so there are three primary leaders whom Israel had said were responsible for organizing the October 7th attack. Two have been killed and announced dead this week, and the third is Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be in tunnels underneath Gaza. But as you said, the real focus now at this point is what will happen with Iran's other proxies in the region.
Thank you, Mike. You can read Mike and the rest of our national security team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.